Okay, so we're going to be learning of, there's plenty of Farbrengens for Parshas Miketz Chanukah to learn from. And we're going to be learning from Miketz Shabbos Chanukah, with that year was Mevarchim, blessed the month of Teves. This year is Rosh Chodesh Teves of the year Tavshin Chai, end of 57, going into 58. Hello, Reb Shimon. Going into 58. So let's bring up the Sicha. So my computer is not acting up. Okay. So again, this is Shabbos Mevarchim. This is Shabbos Mevarchim Teves, Shabbos Miketz, Shabbos Chanukah of the year Tavshin Chai, 1957. So the Rebbe says like this: Isa Ramban. The Rebbe opens up quoting the Ramban, Nachmanides, B'Shem HaMedrash, in the name of the Medrash. Kishira, this is a famous Ramban, a famous idea that the Rebbe would quote many times. That Kishira, Aaron, Chanukah Sanasiyim, when the high priest Aaron saw at the end of Parshas Nasai, when they talk about the dedication of the tabernacle of the Mishkan, all the different heads of the tribes brought to dedicate, starting from Yehuda, to dedicate the Mishkan, and we read about it on Chanukah. Is Chosha Daita. He felt a little bad. Kalishas Adas means like a weakness of the mind, feeling like a little uncomfortable. That he had nothing to do with the dedication. Each head of tribe, for their tribe, brought something, a special sacrifice, a designated sacrifices, and the wagons and all that, and all the gifts to dedicate the Mishkan. And his tribe had nothing, the tribe of Levi, and he was one of the heads of the tribe. Not him. Aaron wasn't involved, and he was involved in the sacrifices, but not as far as gifting in this case. And not his tribe, meaning the tribe of Levi. So he had a chalishas adas. He didn't feel good. He felt bad. Amalei Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the Medrash says God told to Aaron HaKohen, Chayecha, kind of it's a description like I promise you. Shlacha gedola mishalahem. What you have is greater than what they have. You light and set up the candles. Because Aaron HaKohen lights and sets up the candles, that's his kind of thing, and that's greater than whatever dedication was and celebration was done by the princes at the moment, which was at the actual first 12 days of the dedication of the tabernacle. And this is what you've been set for. How long do the karbonas last, so to say, that we're actually sacrificing sacrifices, is dependent as long as the temple is standing. The candles are always going to be lighting towards the menorah. So what does that mean? That's what the Medrash says. So what does that mean? What does that mean? That is that the karbonos, the sacrifices, are only as long as the temple stands. Where the menorah is always going towards the candles of the menorah, always the lights of the menorah always going towards the menorah. So why is that greater than the sacrifices? I mean, the menorah is also in the temple. Mfarish Ramban. So the Nachmanides explains. In Chassidus, we have a tradition that the Ramban was more of had a lot of Kabbalistic flavor, and a lot of times in the opinions and disagreements between the Rambam and the Ramban and these kind of things, Chassidus goes according to the Ramban, the Nachmanides. That what God was telling and hinting to him, so to say, what was it, almost 1,000 years before, that the candles of Chanukah, that's why he was comforting Aaron, because he said the candles of the menorah, which that is the foundation of the holiday of Chanukah, that the Jewish people are going to light, even throughout the diaspora, after the destruction of the temple. That's connected to Aaron HaKohen, it's his thing, the candles. And that lasts even after the destruction of the temple. Which means to say, that's why his connection to the temple, his dedication, so to say, his uniqueness to the temple, to the tabernacle is even greater than the whole, so to say, splendor dedication, right? So he did every day the menorah, but every day went and continued to go even after the destruction, where they had the karbonos, the sacrifices were only as long as the temple stood. From this we see that the menorah is greater than the sacrifices, because the sacrifices are dependent on the bias standing, and the menorah is even after the bias, even after the Beis Hamikdash is standing. And here the Rebbe says even greater than the sacrifice of the ketoras, of the spices, which was also done inside the sanctuary. What's so special about the menorah over sacrifices and the ketoras? That one is gamizman habayis gufa, gedoy lemalis haneris lemayla mimaylas hakavonis mitzad maylazu nasini noisef haneris kayam lat. The Rebbe says two things. It's not just that you have certain things that are kind of when there's a splendor moment you don't see it, but it has a certain a staying power, and because of that, even when other things go away, it's still there. The Rebbe says no. The menorah is even greater in the times of the temple, when they were doing the sacrifices. And because it was greater in the times of the temple, therefore, therefore the candles stood forever, even after the temple. Even in the diaspora, Chanukah, which is represented by the Chanukah candles. So the Rebbe says this double uniqueness, meaning to say that one is that it's even greater in the times of the temple, and that it lasts and because of that it lasts into the diaspora. We find in Chanukah as well. Neres Chanukah hayugam bizman habayis. Right? When did the story of Chanukah happen? We all know the story of Chanukah happened with all the destruction and like Hayom Yom today of all the what you call the Gullus of Yavan, but the Beis Hamikdash was still standing. So it happened bizman habayis. Shari Chacham tikna Yom Tov the Chanukah bizman bayasheni. They instituted the Chanukah while the temple was standing, and the story happened while the temple was standing. It wasn't in great condition. It was defiled. It wasn't pure, but the temple was standing. And also then the menorah lit. That was what they were able to light right away. Was the menorah, and also the Neres Chanukah yesh and gam bizman hagas. We have the Chanukah candles even outside after the destruction. So there is the Chanukah in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, and the Chanukah candles after the time of the Beis Hamikdash, like we light today. So what does this mean? The Rebbe says, although, what's the foundation? Why do we light candles on Chanukah? It's because of the story of the menorah on the Beis Hamikdash. That's the story. Because the reason we light the candles of the menorah is because that we found the special flask of oil. That was one flask that wasn't contaminated by the impurities of the Greeks, and that was for the lighting of the candles of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. But in that itself, there's something about Chanukah that's greater even than the candles in the Beis Hamikdash itself. We know that again, when something is very powerful, like something that's midiraisa, it's biblical. Seemingly, it's more severe, and the laws are more severe. But there's something special about rabbinic laws and rabbinic mitzvahs. There's not that many rabbinic mitzvahs. One of the rabbinic mitzvahs, you have rabbinic gzeiros, but a rabbinic mitzvah, this is not a mitzvah that the rabbis enhanced. This is a mitzvah that the rabbis, so to say, created. And because it's a mitzvah midrabanan, we have a saying from our rabbis that there's a certain severity, a certain carefulness you have to have in the words of the scribes, meaning the rabbis. And it's more sweet to God, the words, so to say, the mitzvahs of the scribes, meaning the rabbis, versus the mitzvahs of the Torah, of the Bible, of the biblical commandments. As the Ramban himself again also says, Second. What is the risk of using Atzmam? Like the Rambam says, what do we see by Chanukah? That even that the menorah itself, the actual 7 candles of the candelabra, is dependent on the Beis Hamikdash. It was only that the miracle that the rabbis instituted because of Chanukah. That's why the menorah continues. Meaning, if you were just to take the mitzvah of menorah, the commandment of the menorah as it was in the Beis Hamikdash, the menorah also would stop working after the temple was destroyed. It was only because that triggered, the miracle of the menorah triggered the holiday of Chanukah, that the Chanukah, so to say, the holiday carried on the tradition of the menorah past the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. What's the idea? The point is that what Chanukah candles show us, not just that it's a menorah, but the Chanukah candles, is that it's above the chain of creation, meaning to say it's above the limitations of the system of creation. Over there, there's no, in the level that's beyond creation, there's no change in Hashem. Like we learned, Aniyah Vaya, the creator is Aniyah Vaya Loishanisi, I don't change. There's no limitation and change. Asar de the place beyond the limitation, beyond creation, is a space, asar, that doesn't have change. It's the way it is at its root. So if something is connected, like the Neris of Chanukah, are connected, are rooted in beyond creation, beyond the limitations and concept of change, so that's the way it comes down to this world. It's not, if the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, it doesn't affect the holiday or the lighting of the menorah. We light forever. The Chanukah candles are going to be lit forever, no matter if the Beis Hamikdash standing in free times and not free times. In Sydney, the morning after, it just continues. Because why? Because Chanukah is not limited by space or time or events. And that's symbolized in the fact that the menorah itself in the temple was, in the Beis Hamikdash, was 7, and 7 is the number of creation, of limitation, 7 days of creation, and Chanukah is the number 8. We know the number 8. The number 8 is about beyond creation. As it's known, the number 7 is within the limitations of creation. And the number 8 is above the limitations of creation. And therefore, our rabbis have taught us, the harp, the lasid when Mashiach comes, is going to be of 8 strings. The harp in the Beis Hamikdash had 7 strings. There's some opinions that the harp of the Beis Hamikdash of Mashiach is going to be of 10 strings. There's 8 and 10, but it's beyond the number of 7. Yes, Aaron.
I don't understand the space and time. It doesn't matter.
Space and time means that we have things that are space and time. For instance, you can only do the sacrifices in the temple. That's a space. You only do it while the temple's standing. That's the time. So when you have limitations of space and time, means that certain things could only be done, and it gets affected by time and events. But when you bring down an energy from Hashem that's beyond creation, and therefore no event or no happening, no times could affect the energy, and therefore Chanukah keeps on going. Chanukah, they lit candles in Auschwitz, they lit candles in the freedom. We light candles in the street of the United States and all over the world. And we'll continue lighting until Mashiach comes. There is no event that's going to change that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So he says like this. So the Rebbe continues. And and it's symbolized in the fact that it's brought down that the harp of the days of Mashiach is going to be of 8 strings. So too Chanukah. Chanukah is all about the revelations that's above, that's beyond creation. Like it's in Mashiach comes. That's why it's symbolized in the 8 candles. It means, although the story is that it lit for 8 days, but the idea is that it lit for 8 days, because it symbolized, it had an energy of the number 8 of the number that's outside creation, beyond creation. The Rebbe says, continues. There's also, one could say, what are you talking about? Chanukah does have limitations. For instance, Shaharei, like the Gemara teaches us, that the days of Chanukah are 8. So there's limitations. There's only 8 days of Chanukah. We don't light on the 24th, and we don't light after the 8 days, which is depending on Rosh Chodesh, if it's 1 or 2 days. But it's only counted 8 days from the 25th. From the 25th of the month of Kislev and further. There's no Chanukah. You can't make a bracha. You don't sing Haner Shalom Sur if you light the candles outside the 8 days of Chanukah. There's no idea of the Chanukah. However, the Rebbe says, this is only about not the times of the system of creation, but actually just the days of the year. It means it's not affected by the years only during this period of time. It's only with regard to the period of time of the year. When this time of the year comes, no matter what's happening, on the 25th of Kislev, every year, notwithstanding of what's happening during that year, Is the Beis Hamikdash standing? Is the Beis Hamikdash not standing? Is this happening? Is that happening? We light candles. It makes no difference if we're in temple times or if we're in diaspora, the godless times. The Rebbe says, exile times. Should be Mei Chanukah. Ein afilu hagbal b'negei lizmani hashana. Kivan. Shaha'ori Mei Chanukah nimshach samir b'chol hashana. And the Rebbe says, I can go even a little further. That we ask, that yes, you can only light the candles on the 8 days of Chanukah, meaning, you can light candles afterwards, but it's not a mitzvah. The meaning from the 25th, you can't make a bracha. From the 25th, 8 days further. But it does affect the whole year, because the energy of Chanukah affects the whole year. Chanukah, in Chalal, one of the rules of Yiddishkeit that the Rebbe emphasizes over and over again, is that anything that happens at a certain time of year, it's not that that's the only time. Pesach is not the only time of redemption. Tu B'Shvat is not the only time of the energy of the fruit, etc. Or Shofar Rosh Hashanah is not the only time of the energy of the Shofar. It's the time when we do it, and it energizes that specific energy throughout the year. The whole year is drawing of the special, unique energy of the Shofar throughout the year from Rosh Hashanah. The whole year is taking energy from the lights of candles of menorah of Chanukah throughout the year. So it is affecting the whole year. It's just that the mitzvah itself, the time that it's done within the years, are the 8 days. The Rebbe says, I'm going to add to this. Should be if you count, in essence, it doesn't really affect throughout the rest of the days of the year. Why? Because the energy from the days of Chanukah lights up the whole year. There's a certain light that we have in our life, in our surroundings, because we light the menorah on the 8 days of Chanukah. And it's not just these 8 days. Our whole year is different until next year Chanukah, because we lit the menorah. This is not unique to Chanukah. We just said that every holiday has that idea. As we know, each holiday gives its energy for the whole year. Like I said, shofar. The energy of shofar is the energy of Kabbalah soul, of accepting the yoke the entire year. The idea of geula, of redemption on Pesach, is the idea of redemption an entire year. So that's not unique about Chanukah. That's something to do with all the holidays. The Rebbe says, but in truth, there's still a difference. The energy of the other holidays versus the energy of Chanukah. So the Rebbe says that the effect of the other holidays only affect in the prayers of the year. Chanukah is through the whole day. What's that mean? So the Rebbe is going to explain, what does it mean that the holidays throughout the year affect the davening of the year, how we daven throughout the year, and Chanukah affects the entire day. So the Rebbe explains, the idea is like this. You do what's known. Shegimar HaRegalim, the 3 main holidays, central holidays, of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, Passover, Shavuos, and the holiday of Sukkot, are connected Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the 3 fathers. Shamoidim Niskanu connected Aves, that we know the holidays were instituted in correspondence to the fathers. Pesach is Avram. How do we know that Pesach is Avram? Because it says that Avram asked Sarah, when the angels, dressed as guests came, Lushi Vasi Ugos, to make the cakes, which represented the matzahs. And we have in the Pesach, we know that the angels came to Avram on Pesach, because it said next year, and Yitzchak was born on Pesach. Shavuos is Keneged Yitzchak. Why Shavuos corresponding to the father Yitzchak, to our father Yitzchak? Because Shetkiyah Shofar Shel Matan Torah. Where did God, so to say, lahavdil, get a horn, a shofar, to blow when the giving of the Torah, which is what we celebrate on Shavuos, is b'shofar mi'elish Yitzchak. He took it from the ram that was sacrificed in place of Yitzchak by the Akedah. And that's why we say, when Mashiach comes, V'hayu b'yemahu, Yitaka b'shofar gadol. What does it mean, Yitaka b'shofar gadol? God's going to blow the big shofar. Because of the two shofars of the ram of Yitzchak, the regular shofar, the smaller shofar, was used for the giving of the Torah, and the shofar gadol, the larger of the two, is going to be used to announce the coming of Mashiach. And Sukkot is Keneged Yaakov. Sukkot corresponds to our father Yaakov, like it says, he made Sukkot for his cattle. So we see Yaakov is connected to Sukkot. So what's that have to do with what we just said before? That the holidays only give an energy in the tefillas, because that's the point. Tefillas always tiknum. Why do we? Who instituted that we do the 3 prayers every day, the morning, afternoon, and evening prayer? Avram tikkun tefillah shachris. We know Vayashkem Avram b'boker. Avram is a morning person, right? The idea that Jewish people wake up early in the morning. We inherited that inability to sleep in the morning. The Netz minion, that's from Avram. That's why they say there's a famous joke in Eretz Yisrael. So Avram is the early riser. That's why we daven Netz. The early minion starts with Avram, because we know it says Vayashkem Avram boker. Avram woke up early. Sometimes, even in Seattle, sometimes it happens more often because of the winter. But sometimes where people are davening even before Netz. I mean, I'm not going to go into the halachic questions of that. And what's that? So who's instituted that davening before Netz? That's called Terach's minion. Terach is Avram's father. So Terach is even earlier than Avram. But he says Avram instituted Shachris, and Yitzchak instituted Mincha, and Yaakov instituted Mariv. Therefore, when the holidays, what is the gateway? What is the valve that the holidays go through to give energy throughout the year? Is each holiday goes through its prayer, because each holiday is connected to our Father. So Pesach is gives energy through the Shachris. Mincha is from Shavuos, and Mariv is the Yaakov's tefillah. Yaakov made sukkahs, and he made tefillas Mariv. He instituted the Mariv prayer. That's what it means. The holidays go through the prayers. Pesach b'tefillas Shachris, Shavuos b'tefillas Mincha, and Sukkos b'tefillas Arvos. But the Rebbe says, but Chanukah doesn't have that limitation. That the morning prayer connects to the Pesach, and the afternoon prayer connects to the Shavuos, and the Sukkot prayer connects to Mariv. Chanukah gives light throughout the day. And what does this mean, Avodah? But the main thing is, what's this mean to our day-to-day? How do we apply this to ourselves? How do we apply this to our Avodah, to our service of God? We know each holiday has its unique character. And a character is defined. And if it's defined, it also goes into a defined moment. So therefore, Chanukah, Pesach, which has its character, gives into the energy that fits into that time of the day. Chanukah is not about a certain character, the character of Geula, the character of Gvura, Chesed, Tiferes. Chanukah was about that self-sacrifice Matisyahu and his sons and the Jewish people had for Torah mitzvahs. It wasn't about anything specific. It was Mesirus Nefesh for God and godliness and Torah. And you can't say there's only a special time when a person has to have the element of self-sacrifice. It's not like I only have self-sacrifice now. Self-sacrifice is something that consumes all time and all places and in the entirety of the person. Everything you do in avodah has to be permeated with and so to say soaked with the energy of Mesirus Nefesh, of self-sacrifice. As Tanya explains, the Alter Rebbe and Tanya, how does one perform any of the Torah mitzvahs? Is dependent. The person constantly remembers, he or she, the person self-sacrifice to God in every part of the Torah mitzvahs that you do. It's not about the specifics, idea of the mitzvah. It's the idea that what I'm doing now is I'm giving myself over to Hashem. There's no specific time or constantly. It means there's certain mitzvahs that have times. But the idea of doing Torah mitzvahs is constant, learning Torah constant, doing mitzvahs whenever you can, whenever they come available, is b'chol nyan yadim, in all the things of a person. Like it says, b'chol derchecha de'eyu, in all your ways you know God. Nimtza she'inyan Mesirus Nefesh, when everything you do has to be with Mesirus Nefesh, tzarich liskol yom kulay. So the Mesirus Nefesh has to be throughout the day. And if Chanukah is the energy of Mesirus Nefesh, there's no specific time for Chanukah throughout the day. Chanukah energizes the entire day that the person should have the koach of Mesirus Nefesh. It's amazing. Because we're not talking about Purim now. But we're talking about what is the energy that we get from Chanukah throughout our days and throughout the day of our days, is the concept of Mesirus Nefesh, of self-sacrifice that they had then for Torah mitzvahs. Again, there was no decree at all against the Jewish bodies. Haman there's many discussions about the difference between Chanukah and Purim, but fundamentally at the end of the day, Haman wasn't asking you what Daf Gemara you learned, or I mean he did, but he wasn't asking you exactly about your Torah mitzvahs. He was looking to kill Jews. The only way they would get out of it is if they convert out of being Jewish. The Chashim Noam weren't asking people to convert. They're saying, don't do Torah mitzvahs. Lashkicham tarisacha. But what is the time of the year that energizes the Mesirus Nefesh throughout the year? That comes from Chanukah. Chanukah is man shemimenu yechayim l'tzrichim nishav Mesirus Nefesh akol Chanukah. That's the well of Mesirus Nefesh, of self-sacrifice that we draw throughout the year to permeate our Torah mitzvahs with Mesirus Nefesh. We draw it from the well of Chanukah. Whatever we do, whatever we're doing throughout the year, whether it's the specific time we're learning Torah mitzvahs, or a divrei reshus, or even our mundane, a person sees the self-sacrifice beyond limitations of a yid. And then you're not just doing things for God. Everything you do is a vessel for God. And you're revealing God's oneness in everything you do. Everything you do is permeated the idea of bringing Echad Hashem Echad, Hashem, God is one. When a person has this through our service in the days of Chanukah on such a level, and especially connected to the fifth night of Chanukah, because the fifth night of Chanukah is the one that is like the sea of Chanukah. So when you awaken within yourself, the level of Mesirus Nefesh means without time, without reason. It doesn't have to make sense. Means you reveal the essence that is beyond your revealed, because in the revealed strengths, it has limitations, beginning and end. It's kavim, it's lines. It starts here, ends there. It's defined. But the essence is not defined. And when a person has Mesirus Nefesh, beyond reason, for God and godliness and his mitzvahs, that's we draw from on Chanukah. And this, what it happens? You have to remember, God is a mirror, right? That we say, upon him. How we behave, God mirrors our behavior. So when we behave in a way of Mesirus Nefesh, self-sacrifice, no limitations, it awakens within Hashem, also by Hashem, beyond the system of creation. A place that doesn't change. That's why Chanukah is the holiday that lasts forever, because it's the concept of consistency. It's Mesirus Nefesh. It goes through every part of you, every part of your voda, and there is no limitation of Mesirus Nefesh. The whole idea of Mesirus Nefesh is to get out of your limitation. So therefore, the holiday itself can't be limited to only being celebrated if the temple is standing, not the temple standing, etc. Famous man of bias, famous man of golas, whether the temple is standing or not. Now the Rebbe adds also that we know that Chanukah is one of the holidays that is going to be also in the days of Mashiach. There's going to be a time when Mashiach comes, according to one opinion, that all the holidays will no longer be with us. The question is no longer be with us, and they'll no longer have an importance. Besides the holiday of Chanukah and Purim, because what brought on the holiday of Chanukah was the self-sacrifice the Jewish people had with the Matisyahu and the Maccabees and the sons of Matisyahu for Torah mitzvahs. And because it comes from self-sacrifice, it's not limited. It can't be that Mashiach comes and say, okay, whatever, the self-sacrifice is gone. It's not. It's something that reaches beyond time, even in the times of Mashiach. And that's how we bring the revelation of Mashiach, through having Mesirus Nefesh throughout our day and in our avodah. Even in the time when it's going to be the resurrection of the dead, we know there's stages of Mashiach coming. There's the time is Manatchia, the resurrection is a further date. We don't have that much time. It's tick-tock. We're 214 years to the dead, to the 6,000 years. Because the Elef Hashvi, the Rebbe says now, Ad Gilum the Elef Hashvi, the 7,000 year is after Mashiach and after Tchiyah, after Tchiyas HaMesim, after the resurrection of the dead. And even then, Yom Shekul Shabbos on the 7,000th year, which is going to be a day which is going to be Shabbos, Menuchal Chaylam, even they were going to have the energy of Mesirus Nefesh, the energy of Mashiach, the energy of Chanukah. Then the Rebbe said the Maimer on the 25th of Kislev is 8 days of Chanukah. And now the Rebbe continues after the Maimer like this. You have to remember in general, as years go, the year Tafshin Chai, 1958, end of 57, going into 58. Throughout that year, it was a very energetic year. The Purim of Tafshin Chai is a renowned Purim. So the Rebbe was very freilich, very, very, very lebedik. It was a super energy in the year Tafshin Chai. So the Rebbe says like this: Mitzinu, we find Shiyamei Chanukah Kishurim Minin Tzedakah. Chanukah is connected to giving charity. Krishin is Barbis Vadish Tilneza, as the Rebbe says, he explained in the Farbrengen before that. I'm assuming the Rabbi Shabbos Bayeshev, right after Yitas Kislev. Tzedakah, like Chanukah, is beyond the chain of creation, beyond limitations. Chanukah and Yane Mesirus Nefesh. Chanukah, like we said, is self-sacrifice, which is the idea that that's beyond limitations. La'oris etzem nefesh, to awaken within the person, the essence of one's soul. Shalamayil mekoichas, that's outside of your revealed strengths. A person has revealed strength. Say this is, you have a person as once in a shul, and someone asks about tzedakah. Someone, the head of the shul, the Gabbai, Rebbe Yezevich and Tzemach Tzedek, asked the person for a certain amount of money. The person says, Rebbe, I'm not educated like that. That's beyond my koiches. It's beyond my abilities. It wasn't beyond his means. It's just that to give such a number was not something that was within his strengths. And again, when you tap in to the etzem, to the atzmas, to the essence, beyond your koiches, beyond your strengths, so again, God responds to that. God mirrors us again. So if we're going to be based on limitations, so God is limited. But if you are living in a space outside of limitations, so gam l'mayla, then you bring down a light. Is a light that's l'mayla mishlachas, beyond the chain of creation. That's what Chanukah does. V'cheinu b'niyat tzedakah. So too applies to charity. Shekasher asiyas at tzedakah hikedabai. When a person does tzedakah in the right way, meaning v'chol me'edecha, with all your might, or v'chol me'mincha, like they say, mamish, without any limitations. Azayin yanin Mesirus Nefesh l'mayla masecha. So that's like Mesirus Nefesh, beyond logic. It doesn't make sense. V'tama davar. Because the whole idea of tzedakah doesn't make sense. To do tzedakah in the proper way, not to say, okay, this is what I can help you with now, the proper way, it doesn't make it's not logical, it doesn't make sense. A person should give in a way of tzedakah that's mamish mi'alami ever. It's not logical. In one side, we tell a person you have to give your own life. You're giving what matters to you to someone else. Even if she said, either you push it, worked on it, you worked really hard to earn your money. A person comes home, I worked hard for this, and now you want me to give it to you? The Rebbe quotes Tanya. Even if it wasn't such a laborious thing, you got a Yerusha, I don't know, the money came to you without so much toil. But it's Chai Nafshi because you could have done something else with it. You could have bought yourself a nice car. Last time you got me klum, and now you're giving it to someone who has nothing. So that's one thing. I mean, that's one thing that tzedakah demands from a person. On the other side, so it means on one side you're saying the person says, I'm giving you something that I mamish toiled on, or something that I could have bought something else with. And then we're telling the person, on the other side, don't make any conditions and don't have any agenda. And here the Rebbe goes, wow. The Rebbe says, don't even give tzedakah with an agenda that if I give tzedakah, God's going to give me, if I give 10%, He's going to make me rich. The famous idea of aser, give charity, b'shvil, so you should become wealthy. So that's an agenda, right? You're giving, it's an investment. And usually we say you should. Test me on this. But the Rebbe says that's a limited level. But even the level of giving tzedakah to become rich is limited. There's an agenda there. And never goes even further. Not for anything else beyond even the material blessings of wealth, but even the spiritual things that come to how we know the power of tzedakah. That also shouldn't be your agenda. The only reason you're giving tzedakah because it doesn't make sense. You don't even know what's going to happen. You don't know the time, the yamin and the smile. But just because right now the poor person needs it. It's not about you, what you're going to get in return. Or lose in return from the other side. Right now the poor person needs it. The Kfishin is bar b'sicha and al-barichas. As the Rebbe talked in length, I'm assuming in Parshas Vayeshev. Ilu hayeh mitzavim alav litin ani in chitzayni she'eni negei lekokach hayeh lezeh adai makom seichel. If you're asking someone to give something that's external, that's not so personal, so then you could say, then logic could say, should I give, shouldn't I give? Aval, באופן שיכול להכניס בזה תנאים הנגיעים למציאות שלו, גם אז היה דבר משכבה בשכל. So if you're saying that, if it's like this, if you're telling a person to give something that's not essential, so then the person would say, that makes sense. I mean, it's not essential to me anyways. When one of my children once came to my in-laws' house with gifts, all kind of different things, jump ropes and certain pens. I said, oh, and wrapped it and gave it to her cousin. I said, oh, it's so nice. She goes, oh, I don't need it anyways. So I'm saying, like, if it's chitzonius, it's not important to me, so it's not a big deal. Or if you could tell a person, I'll give tzedakah of something essential, but it has to be for my benefit. On condition that I could pen in something that benefits me. What do I get out of it? Even if it's not even spiritual, what do I get out of it? Then you can say, okay, it makes sense. There's an investment, there's a return. We're asking a person not to give something secondary. Give something that's mamish your essence. Your life depends on it. And the Rebbe says, even especially, it comes a situation where sometimes someone asks you for tzedakah, you don't even know how you could give the tzedakah. The first thing is how I'm going to take care of this person who needs help. And then you have to figure out how you're going to pay for it. We're talking about, the Rebbe says, here we're talking about a person giving your essence. I love and you have to give it not for yourself, for someone else. And totally not counting in what's important to you, what's about me. The Rebbe adds to this. And the Rebbe says that God wants more from the person. It's not enough. That although you've given someone that's mamish essentials, things that are for you, and for nothing in return, not spiritually, no unconditional tzedakah. Not even for a thank you. The Rebbe says you can't do begrudgingly. You have to do it with simcha, with joy. That the Rebbe says absolutely makes no sense. Mela, they say to the person, give not chitzonius, give pnimis, chay nafshe. Mela, they say to the person, you don't even know where you're getting it from. Mela, they say to the person, you're not allowed to pencil in any conditions to God. But now you're telling the person you have to give with simcha, with joy. Mamish at the opportunity of doing the mitzvah. The Rebbe says that b'chlal doesn't make sense. That there is a so where does it come from? Where does the person have the ability to do that? Where's the yid? This is the nature of a yid. Where does the yid have the ability to do that? Because it comes from the essence that's beyond logic. And that's the avoid of Chanukah. The avoid it doesn't make sense. What Matisyahu and his sons didn't make sense. It was all inspired by their sister. I mean, that's where the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's such a small straw. And when we reveal the essence of our soul, that again, God mirrors that. We've had many times, the Rebbe, throughout the years, the Rebbe was very into this. The Rebbe would push people sometimes to things, and tzedakah and other things. It would be difficult for a person, didn't make sense, no logic. But that was the only way. Sometimes that's the only way for things to flow through, because then it awakens within Hashem the limitless. I mean, when a person needs a bracha in something, a yeshua in something, not saying again, not penciling in conditions, but sometimes what brings tzedakah matzal mimaves, like Rabbi Akiva's daughter, she didn't have any cheshbonos. She didn't even know that she was going to die that day. According to nature, Rabbi Akiva's daughter was going to die that day, the day of her wedding. And she was saved because she gave tzedakah to someone. She gave food from the wedding to a poor person. Why? Because in order that in the laws of limitations, it was destined for her to die. But that's only within the systems of creation, so to say, in the cosmos, in the mazel of things. But ein mazel Yisrael. And how do you get into ein mazel Yisrael? You tap into the beyond limitations. By day, Cyrus sets him nefesh pa'im gam ma'il Cyrus from shachas arab league vul shlemal mikol akbolos. V'zeh mashakosif, and this is what it says. Ateres teferes seva b'derech tzedakah timotze. That means that Ateres, the crown of tiferes, of beauty, and of old age, is in b'derech tzedakah timotze. You find it in charity. Shaydei tzedakah zoichin le'inyan haseva. How does a person live out to ripe old age? Seva is like a kind of a state where a person is living in seva, in good age. Which is also beyond the chain of creation. The person reaches that kind of age. When a person, the Rebbe is pushing the idea of tzedakah. When a person gives tzedakah, that awakens the ma'ala mederech hateva, beyond nature, to have this bracha of seva, I'm not sure exactly the English word for seva, but it's connected to old age. The Rebbe says like this, and this is specifically connected to the idea of tzedakah, which is connected to a house. We'll see what that means. The Rebbe says, if we get there in Sifyud. So the Rebbe says, this is connected specifically to tzedakah that's connected to a house. I'm not sure if the Rebbe is talking about the Rebbe is maybe doing an appeal for the base medrash, for the shul. Then you're bringing down not just an energy that's beyond the chain of creation, but has a connection to the chain of creation. Because bias is very makiv, very outside. To play mamish outside of the space. A mark of the bias. The bias, there's different kind. There's pneumius when you internalize something. That's like something. The light gets internalized, which is represented by the idea of Malakalam, how Hashem fills the world. Then you have mark of energy that surrounds a person or surrounds a space, like clothing, which is called mark of akarev. But it's mark if it's outside. You can't eat food. Can't eat your clothing. You need it for shelter, for warmth, for the weather, right? For tznius, for dress. But at the same time, it's not. It's outside you, but it fits you. It has to fit you. It has to be matim to the person. So it's makiv. It's called makiv akarev. But the house is makiv arachik. A house is most houses. You don't have to be measured to know if you can fit in the house. Kafishin is bar leos. The Rebbe again explained. This is a continuation of an idea that Rebbe spoke on Yud Tes Kislev. There's a difference between garments, clothing, and a house. Clothing is outside, but it's outside that fits. That's like an outside energy, but it's connected to the energy inside. So a connection outside the world, but it's kind of connected to hishtalshlis. Like clothing is outside, but it has to fit. Though it's outside, it's encompassing. Harishach is still connected to the chain of things. Because it has to fit. A house, a person doesn't have to build a house. Of course, you can want a bigger house, a smaller house. Is it cramped? Is it not cramped? There's a lot of questions you can have about a house. But in general, you can't say that a house has to be built for a specific gender or for a specific size, etc. It says, the Gemara teaches us, Kol Adam Shein Lebayis Eini Adam. One who does not have a home is not considered a person. Kach muva haloshin b'chassidus. Av shaloshin gemara hu kol adam she'en lo karka einei adam. The Rebbe says this is the way Chassidus translates it. Although the Gemara doesn't say bayis, it says karka, land. Not the same thing. Where's the marker that Chassidus says that it's a house, not just not just land? Karka livness alav shiyadir boy. Because Taisvis says, what's the idea of, what does it mean that a person is not a person if you don't have a home? You have to have a home to live in. So when the Gemara says, She'en boy karka doesn't have land, so Taisvis explains, karka live nice love, so you could build sheyidr boy, so you should live there. So what's the point of the karka? A house. The marker in Chassidus that defines a person's, so to say, who is a person? Is a person who has a home. Doesn't mean you have to be a homeowner, but you have a home to live in, is based on the Tosfos, who says that the idea of the karka is a land that you could build on. Why is it definitive to say? It doesn't say anywhere if a person doesn't have food. You could say, if you don't have food, you're hungry. If you don't have clothes, you'll be cold. If you don't have clothes, you won't be clothed. But it doesn't say if you don't have clothes, you're not a person. But it says if you don't have a home, you're not a person. Why? Because the house is connected to the essence of the person. To the core of the person's soul. Only when you have a home, like we're saying, that you get into the essence is a makiv, is an energy that's encompassing. So if a person doesn't have a home, it means the physical home you have is a representation of what are you tapped into in your spiritual energy. So the home represents that you have an ability to tap into the makiv harachik, the outside space. Like we said before, it's not an encompassing energy that enhances and protects your inner qualities, like clothing does. Right? Clothing shows a person's figure and it's made to fit the figure, etc. Shem Bagbala, which is limitations. So it's definitely not the inner qualities. It's definitely not the clothing that is clothing the inner qualities. It's the essence. The essence is not definitive. That's why is a house? It means what the Rebbe is saying over here is like this. That when we're going to have to stop here, and I'm not sure what the Rebbe is getting to. The Rebbe, I think, is trying to get either to just see the end. I think the Rebbe is getting to maybe support the Rebbe was talking about support for building Kfar Chabad in Eretz Yisrael. Kfar Chabad is the Chabad city by the airport. So the Rebbe wanted people to build, and the Rebbe was very into building for Kfar Chabad and to build for the refugees that were coming. So the Rebbe wanted the Askanim, the people, to get government money and other funding and personal funding that people should support to build Kfar Chabad. So the Rebbe is building the case for building homes for people. So the Rebbe says like this. What the Rebbe is saying is like this. Just to put it in short before we close the class, that when you have a person has inner qualities, that's panimims. That's like represented by Torah, by food. You have what's called clothing, which is called makiv. It's encompassing. It's not inside you. It's covering you from the outside, but it's carved. It's close to you. It's fit for you. And then you have the house, which is an outside space. So even though seemingly a person needs food more than you need clothing, you won't live without eating food. In theory, you could live without clothing. And a person also needs clothing in some ways more than shelter. But on the other side, clothing, food, and so to say, the panemius is connected to very limited energy of the person. It's only your koiches, it's only your expressive abilities. A makiv from the outside energy, so that protects, like the person's protected from the clothing, but again, it fits your character. So though it's not your character itself, and you could also, it's not as exact as, so to say, food. It's on the outside of you, so therefore you could wear a larger coat, you could wear smaller clothing, but it's basically meant towards your character. So it's also outside of the space of, so to say, the limitations of the world, but it's made to fit the space of the world. The house represents a space that it's not definitive. It's just a big room. It's a big house. It's a house. They have space. Be'ezus Hashem, everyone should have. So when you walk into a house, so it's connected to what energy is connected to you. It's very disconnected, seemingly, to your character. You don't know you know a little bit about how a person decorates a house or how much a person could afford in a house, but it's very hard to really know from the person who the person is. It's not the same house could house many different types of people, genders, types, characters. So seemingly it's very disconnected. But it's very disconnected because it's connected to your essence that's very it's not revealed really in the character of the person. The essence of people are more connected to each other, to the next person, than the character of a person. The characters say, I only like these type of people, I only get along with this gender of people, this type of people, etc. But your essence, every Jew is connected. The idea is to reveal that into your reality. The bias, what seems to be a very encompassing energy, which is represented by your essence, should be internalized in your actual character in day-to-day life. All right, this is a deeper concept that we can further discuss now. I have to go. Wishing everyone a happy Chanukah, Chodesh Tov, and a good Shabbos. Take care.